things are changing in our world, and mobility is the first field where you can really see this.
European cities increasingly face problems when it comes to transport and to traffic, so it's really something that cities are trying to solve, and where the European Commission is also trying to help.
We are talking about European Mobility Week.
Mobility Week is the European Commission's awareness-raising campaign to actually tackle these challenges that cities and towns in Europe experience. You can find us on MobilityWeek.eu.
When we developed the website, our proposal was to create a sharing space where people can download all the information they need to organize a campaign to promote sustainable urban mobility.
The advantage of the .eu domain is it's a clear signal that this is a European website, and we are involving all European cities or European member states, people from all European countries, so it's the perfect domain for our campaign.
If you want to be involved in the European Mobility Week campaign, you have to go on MobilityWeek.eu and you will find all the information to start with your campaign.
University students researching unmanned aerial vehicles visited the U.S. Army Research Laboratory at Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland, to discuss their recent findings.
Let's leverage the VTOL capabilities of your typical quadcopter with the fixed-wing flight performance, transit time efficiency.
The Army reached out to the students to promote collaboration, officials said.
Well, today we invited the University of Maryland and Penn State University to come and present, researchers and students to present on their ongoing efforts on micro-air vehicles.
The students put their UAVs on display during the presentation and answered many technical questions about processors, control strategies, and aerodynamics.
So this is an opportunity for ARL researchers and the students at the local universities to present each other's research and network and learn a little bit about what each other are doing.
The students came to the attention of Army researchers because they had participated in a May 2017 competition at the American Helicopter Society Annual Forum at Fort Worth, Texas.
The students were challenged to design, build, and fly a micro-air vehicle to autonomously navigate a course, identify targets, and safely avoid obstacles and return back.
The lab is also sponsoring 2 of the students for a summer internship program at the Vehicle Technology Directorate.
And so they have extensive knowledge of their ongoing efforts, so it was a good opportunity for the interns themselves to have an opportunity to present in a formal professional setting, and also to get the experience of meeting new researchers that they're not familiar with, but also learn about what these researchers are doing here at ARL.
Avra said he hoped the students also left with a better idea of what the Army is researching.
We are always looking for opportunities similar to this in micro-air vehicles, sensors, vehicle technology, all the disciplines that ARL work on related to helicopters and vertical lift platforms.
Avra's involvement in advancing the local Aberdeen chapter of the American Helicopter Society guides his engagement with outside researchers following the same path, he said.
It's always good to have opportunities to make each other aware of their ongoing research efforts, to also set up collaboration opportunities with ARL through the Open Campus, Open House initiative.
For ARL TV, I'm David McNally.
We're doing 1,000 of the CDS bundles, the door bundle, and they're just the barrels filled up with water right now. They drop out of the planes. Sometimes they're water, sometimes they're ammo, sometimes it's MREs. It's a lot of practice and to see our actual ability. It's interesting. Canada's here, France is here, so it's interesting to see comparisons.
It's nice to know how the other people work because they do things differently than us. Just the cohesion with the other nation. It's the communication, is like in the real world, like we're gonna be prepared to work with the other country and get the mission accomplished.
drop international bundles for the first time. The drops went extremely well. Mobility Guardian is teaching me a lot about things I didn't realize that I needed to know. I'm definitely enjoying the experience that I'm getting. My favorite part so far has been getting to just work with different crews, getting to know different people and learn about their career fields.
Yeah, the ground wasn't as soft as I'm used to. I'm aware it's primarily an Air Force exercise. My job would be pack on my shoe, get my ruck ready, and go find a door bundle. We kick out the aircraft. So it's probably about 200 meters down that way. So my job's to go, link up with my team, go down there, set it up, and just wait for some fire missions. I love it. Probably the best thing I've done in my career so far.
Being such a small group and a small squadron, we don't often get multiple tankers airborne to fly together. So to be able to come here and associate with other tanker types and other tanker aircrew to find out how they operate, learning points out of that. The importance of our coalition is really important to us for both operations and exercises. So we need to train in exercises so that we can perform to our highest ability on operation.
As air medical evacuation, we only see our small piece of the mission.
On your command, you're lower to the ground.
But coming out here gives us the opportunity to see like the airdrops and people forward deploying. So I think it's pretty cool to actually see something a little bit bigger than what we do at home station.
Every jump is different. In this jump, we learn the new brotherhood and the new fraternal with your country, with the USA Army and the USA Air Force, and new friends, and we keep with the French, Pakistan, and Mexico. I hope I come back again.
I think the most important thing we can do when we have as many partner nations in this exercise policy is try to integrate them into all facets of it. We're able to have British and New Zealand partners, SEER guys out here with us as well. They just bring a whole new attitude, accent, and experience to the table.
We had earlier an Australian crew chief for the KC-30 come by, and he told us about his job and how them as Australians have actually refilled American planes. And that just kind of puts, I don't know, the bigger picture, paints the bigger picture. Like, we're not the only people in this fight and that we actually do collaborate.
When the clouds form, the rain pours, and water is all around, you'll ask yourself, how prepared or unprepared are you? Did you raise your utilities, appliances and such? Install a sump pump, Clean the drains, just in case it decides to rain. Do you know your risks? Have you checked the local plans? You should cover your property with a flood insurance policy. Is your emergency supply kit packed? Is your family prepared? Do they know what to do, where to go, and how to stay safe? Because when the water starts to rise, you must act quickly and be wise. Turn on your radio, listen for updates, and if authorities tell you to go, hurry up and do so. Get to safe ground, go as high as you can, do what you need to do, but don't put yourself in harm's way. Just inches of water can sweep you away. Once the water is gone, move carefully. Be on the lookout for dangers you can't see, animals, debris, and electricity. Do not go home until you hear the all clear. Now when you get home, be aware. Not everything is as safe as it may appear. So before the clouds form, the rain pours, and water is all around, get prepared. Make a plan and keep yourself dry. Get started today. Go to ready.gov/prepare.
Back in February of 2017, a European team and NASA announced the discovery of the TRAPPIST-1 system with 7 Earth-sized planets, several of which may have the right temperatures to host liquid water.
This got the entire planetary community excited, as these are prime candidates in the search for life.
There was only one problem. When the team simulated the system, planets quickly started crashing into each other.
That's where we come in. By simulating the system's formation and obtaining self-consistent orbital parameters that are difficult to constrain directly, we found that the system's unprecedented clockwork configuration can keep the system stable for as long as we could run our supercomputer simulations. It turns out that for every 2 orbits of the outermost planet, the next one in does 3, the next one in 4, then 6, 9, 15, and 24.
That's when we realized that this remarkable pattern would produce striking rhythms and harmonies if we could translate the planet's motion into music. So we used a numerical simulation to play a note for every orbit of the outer planet. The next planet produces a perfect 5th, where the higher note has 3 cycles for every 2 of the lower note. What you're hearing are the actual orbital frequencies, sped up into the human hearing range.
You might notice that some of the notes are not exactly in tune. That's actually because the system has been losing its initial tuning over the last several billion years due to the same types of tidal forces that the Moon exerts on the Earth.
Next, we added a drum for each time a planet passes its outer neighbor. That's when they really communicate with each other gravitationally, keeping themselves locked in a tight repeating pattern. And finally, we took the stars' observed brightness variations and sped those up so you can hear the sound of sunspots and solar flares.
It seems somehow poetic that the same clockwork configuration that allows us to generate this great music can at the same time be responsible for the system remaining stable long enough for us to see it today.
My name is Philip Long. I am the Chief Innovation Officer and Associate Vice Provost at the University of Texas at Austin.
Okay. Well, you're at the conference this week talking a little bit about learning recognition systems. What is a learning recognition system?
Fundamentally, a learning recognition system is a piece of software and a framework for identifying when students have achieved something that faculty or others in the institution have set out for them to learn, doing so in a way that tries to make it as objective as possible and recording that so that it can be used as a way of justifying the value of whatever achievement it is that they've been awarded. It doesn't mean that they're technology-based. They've been around for hundreds of thousands of years in some ways. Well, early on, if you remember, people used to get, and still do in the military, they get badges associated with achievements of various kinds, some for performance in academic settings, some for performance on the field of battle. So those are recognition systems. It can be done simply in awarding a certificate for accomplishing the various requirements of a course of study. What's happened in recent years with the invention of various kinds of digital technologies is those have been effectively digitized, and the processes have been written up as execution steps in a learning sequence that can be tracked in a digital environment. And by doing so, it also affords greater both transparency and visibility to the learning, but it also allows it to be connected to other kinds of digital artifacts.
Is there any sort of standardization going on where you can take things across institutions, across different learning systems?
Absolutely. For a while there was something called the Open Badge Initiative, which was a community-based organization that was trying to standardize the actual structure of the data associated with the elements that are necessary to recognize achievement, who the issuer was, what it was for, what is the evidence that was submitted to be able to judge and be awarded this particular achievement, et cetera. That group has been merged now with an international software standards organization. That group is called IMS Global, and they do interoperability standards for all kinds of software, primarily in the learning environment. So they define interoperability for how learning tools plug into a learning management system through a standard called LTI, or how information is captured, the events associated with the activities students are doing in a class, how those sensors are described, and how that data is passed on to something else so that everybody can follow the same pattern and therefore that data can move across boundaries.
How do you think learning recognition systems will evolve and affect higher education in the future?
And that's probably the $64,000 question. In some cases, it depends on the sector of higher education you're talking about. They have been traditionally associated with more skill-based activities. And so those programs and those parts of higher education that have a more vocational scope tend to be adopting these things relatively quickly. More traditional research-focused universities have been less willing to step into this space because I think they would say, well, how do you objectively determine that someone has thought creatively? And that's what we do in university. We teach creative thinking, or we teach you how to think better. And the challenge is, in fact, just doing that, because in some sense, that judgment is being made by the faculty member in the classroom based on something. And in many ways, this effort is trying to say, well, what can we do to actually extract out the key elements of that in a way that if you brought 50 similar professors together of that discipline and you asked them, did these things indicate that they achieved X, there would be reasonable concurrence that they'd say yes.
Do you think, and this may be overly dramatic talk, I'm curious, do you think the popularization of badges, certifications, could not delegitimize degrees, but could compete with the degree system?
Right. So there's certainly the potential threat of the tower of badges, similar to the Babel of tower that we are familiar with. And it is a legitimate concern, particularly if the attention to the criteria associated with the rubric for assessing whether or not something has been achieved is taken carefully and seriously in how it's being developed and applied. I think that the likelihood of that is diminishing even as the potential growth of badging increases, because there has been additional data added to the open badge specification that describes who the issuer is, what the authority the issuer has for making that assertion, if there's a third party that has validated that the issuer is capable of making that assertion. So they're sort of tracing back, if you will, the authenticity and the authority associated with that process, which gives a little bit more credibility to the assertion in the first place. What is more interesting is the potential for the idea that the issuer is no longer just the institution. And that's the idea that the students themselves may be able to issue badges to others based on the extent to which that student judged the contribution of another student to their own work. So you might expect, for example, if you have a certain number of badge points that you can allocate to your colleagues when you're working on a project, and you've really helped me a lot, I could give you X number of badge points, write a description as to why those badge points were earned. That's the criteria. What's the rubric by which I judge that because I was able, based on your help, to do the following, and then issue you something.
Mm-hmm.
That starts to democratize the process and potentially makes institutions nervous.
Right, yeah. There's a million questions that go along with that we don't have time to get to, but sure. I'll let that one go because, I mean, I find myself feeling ambivalent about it. I mean, on the one hand, it's great to it's like music. It's like the music industry. It's great that anybody can make music now, but it kind of sucks that anybody can make music now.
Well, yes and no. I mean, there are people that have emerged out of that that vast horde who turn out to be phenomenally creative, worthy of everything that they've achieved. And that there's a lot of more noise in the system. Yeah. So it improves or increases the need for discernment. Yeah. But you can also think of using this in ways to surface work that otherwise has been invisible. The most common example is most faculty are judged by the merits of their publications. Their publications are submitted to peer review processes. The people who do the peer review are, of course, their fellow faculty. But those people aren't rewarded for that work. It's just built into the system. The publisher takes their feedback, uses it to judge whether or not to accept the publication or not. The individual who does that work for that purpose, what do they get? Other than legitimately a contribution to their own discipline. So there's a sense of community obligation. But what if the publisher awarded that individual review points and some sort of quality recognition for the reviews, and that starts to distinguish better reviewers from other reviewers. Mm-hmm. And if that reviewer could then take that information and present it in their package for promotion and tenure and say, I've been doing all of these reviews, it's taken this amount of time, and here's the value that I've contributed based on the publisher's comments. Mm-hmm. Shouldn't that count for something?
Absolutely.
Right now, you can't do that.
Yeah. What technology trends do you think will enable student agency in the future?
Well, the biggest one is the thing that's quite the hype these days in the cryptocurrency world, and that's the so-called blockchain. And the reason is that the blockchain can disintermediate or separate the mechanism by which the award of credit and its management can be done independent of the institution. So in the cryptocurrency world, the whole sort of disruption that came along with that is that you no longer need banks to intermediate the exchange of money. People can buy and sell across each other and do it by transferring Bitcoin from one person to another, and there's nothing in the middle. Well, in the blockchain environment for universities and credit, you can imagine credits being awarded and instantiated in a block. That block is part of a fabric that's outside of the institution. They may be a part of it if they wish, but they don't have to be. And since it's been encrypted, it can't be changed, so it has the same authority that it always has. At the time, the value of it and the authority of it is determined when it's written, and it stays with it permanently. So you no longer have to go back to an institution and say, did Joe Smith actually earn this? Well, if they've got a piece of information that's written into a blockchain that says they did, then they did. That's cool. And so there's a question of what sort of impact that will have on the institutions down the road. Is that one that frees them from that responsibility and keeps them from having to spend that time and money and energy doing all that verification? Yeah. Or does it threaten them?
Is there anything else you want to add that we haven't touched on?
You mentioned earlier about the proliferation of types of certification and such. I think the backstory behind that is the thing that we haven't talked about, and that's the actual pressures from the job market and employers who are struggling to find ways of identifying workers who can perform the jobs they have, and are a bit taken aback at this point by the lack of information a transcript affords them. And now they've built all kinds of procedures to try to look past that and talk to the person's references and other sorts of things. But you can imagine where some of that evidence of their achievement is instantiated in some sort of a record, including actual artifacts that they produced to be awarded that work, which gives the employer a chance to actually see, oh, here's a CAD drawing that they made while they were doing this project, or here is a way in which they tested this particular chemical. That's a lot different than getting a B in chemistry.
Yeah, that's true. Thanks so much for your time, Phil. Appreciate it.
Tell me when to go.
I don't have to tell you.
Tell me when to go.
I'm not going to tell you.
Wade D's whack. He ain't dirty, he ain't ghetto, and he definitely ain't no kid. His hair, whack. His gear, whack. His jewelry, whack. His foot stand, whack. The way that he talks, whack. The way that he doesn't even like to smile, whack. Me, I'm tight as fuck.
Got really whacked. I don't want to just be known as a nigga that skateboards and puts shit on YouTube.
So the Maker Spaceship is a 39-foot mobile maker space, and we drive it all around San Jose to bring technology, STEM learning really out into the community. A lot of people don't have access to technology that's created in their very own backyard. We might be at a school, we might be at a senior center or a preschool, or we'll be at a more public event, kind of like you see here today when we're at the Movable Feast, which is where the food trucks come and gather and people can come out for a family night of dining and give people an opportunity to play and make and learn. Okay, 1, 2. So today we're doing green screen photos, and so there's actually a built-in green screen and projection screen inside the vehicle. People can take their photos and then use Photoshop and manipulate the photos that they just created. Okay. 1, 2. There's a monitor at each of the stations and power and ventilation, but otherwise it's all flexible. There's 3D printers, laser cutters, CNC. We have cooking equipment, we have sewing machines, soldering irons, robotics, pretty much anything that you want to be able to make and do programming with, we have available and can load onto the bus.
After you're done, press enter on the prompt.
Enter. Okay, good.
Yeah, good. The responses from the community have been really wonderful. You know, when you don't even have a computer at home and this bus pulls into your neighborhood, it shows that the library isn't just a building someplace far away, that we're here in the neighborhood, we're working with the community to find out what their needs and wants are, and then providing them. So I'm very fortunate to work as the Innovations Manager for San Jose Public Library.
I like it, it's pretty cool.
It's a fun job, that's for sure. And I get to work with an amazing group of people to build big, beautiful things.
Okay, drag it in, because you're trying to get all that green out of there.
When I look at myself, I don't think I'm somebody who's necessarily going to change the world, but I can make an impact in San Jose. And the more lives that you go out and touch, then the bigger impact we all have. And together we can change the world.
That's good.
One of the best things we can do is start to think about the ecosystem being more personalized, to allow you to use the tools that you need to make sense of the world around you, and me and others to do that. We probably will need a central kind of learning management system, but how do we help students be more metacognitive and thinking about the tools that they use and how they're either helping or perhaps even obstructing their own learning.
All of us probably have a young person in our lives that plays video games, right? In fact, we had a video game conference in Austin recently where they were talking about how they have stolen from learning theory, because they realize as they design games, what they do is at levels of the game, you have to develop knowledge, skills, and ability at one level, have it assessed before you're allowed to go to the next level. Sounds a lot like what we do in the world of education. So part of what we need to think about is that kind of leveling theory and making sure that every student understands how they can level up next, right? If I'm here right now at this level, how do I go from this level to this level and make sure they have access? One, they're clear about what that level is, and two, they understand the resources that'll help them get there, and that it's not a mystery.
A lot less lecture, a lot less, just talking to the students. And also in online learning, we are really looking to bring activity and to have it go past the discussion boards, because too many discussion boards, text-based only, and that's the only interaction that students have with the instructors and with each other.
It has been well researched that group learning and collaborative learning strategies can be implemented to not only allow students to be successful, but also to engage them in that process that then leads to greater inquiry of ideas and concepts throughout the course.
If we think of it purely in technology terms, I would say it's the LMS in a post-LMS world. A component-based architectural approach so that you populate your landscape with various apps and they hook together by using open standards. So I would say that the road ahead for technology, particularly in teaching and learning, is this notion of this next generation digital learning environment that is based on components, it's based on open standards, so that each school is beginning to define and outfit its landscape in a way that really suits its needs and the needs of its students and learners.
A culture that embraces change and innovation is what's going to be needed in higher education, and I feel like some institutions are ahead of others. And I don't mean just a particular technology change, but just a change of process, a change of thinking, being open to perpetual change.
We've got to do a better job of listening to students and their families and other stakeholders that may be involved with them in their educational journey. I think that we have a lot to learn from them. They've got a lot to tell us. And I don't know that we have the mechanisms in place to hear that message very well. Or when we do hear it, if it doesn't meet our expectations of what we think they're going to tell us, we have a tendency to ignore that and go back to what we're comfortable with.
If you had a medical condition right now and you went to seek medical help, the medical field tells you need to come in prepared, right? You have to become an informed consumer of that medical information. I think the learner, long-term, has to get to that mindset as well. Our students have to get to the mindset of being responsible for taking agency for their own learning and embrace that. If we can get our learners to that point, then I think we're closer to having them prepared for that continuum of lifelong learning that we know they're going to need. We know their careers are going to change 10 times over their lifespan. The only way they're going to be able to make those transitions is if they have the core skill sets from career to find the information they need, engage with that, become an owner of that in order to control and manage their own careers.
Well, I would definitely say my passion always kind of lies with predictive analytics, and I think that's going to be a really kind of key tool to help move student success forward. I think it really puts a lot of the right information in the hands of individuals, either faculty, advisors, administrators, and then you can really implement targeted interventions for students. So I think that's an opportunity that I think will further us with student success in any other tool.
So I think one of the most important strategies when looking at student success is empathy. We certainly work with a lot of technology day to day, but I think if we lose connection with the human part of the equation, that can be very dangerous. We do a lot of work in technology that can be seen to supplant the human connection, when I think what we need to do is look at augmenting it. And I think if we make a connection with the student, then we understand where they are and what assistance they need to become successful.
Hello, I'm Sergeant Major of the Army, Dan Daly. Readiness is our Army's top priority. Each and every soldier must be able to deploy, fight, and win when called upon by our nation. Right now, too many soldiers in the active duty, National Guard, and Army Reserves are medically non-deployable, many of whom only need to complete annual PHAs or dental exams to be green on their MedPros. Readiness is a command responsibility, but soldiers can stay ahead by managing their individual medical status on AKO and by following through with the scheduled appointments. Get your exams, complete your PHA, and get your shots. Your medical readiness has a direct impact on the state of our Army and our national security. Soldier for life, Army strong.
I have refined my question to how do companies use social media to evaluate potential employees? I'll do my initial search using Search at UW. Starting my search with Search at UW will allow me to explore my topic in a variety of sources: scholarly articles, books, and media at UW-Milwaukee. This is also where I can request books from other libraries in the UW system. To get to Search at UW, I'll navigate to the UWM Library's homepage. Search at UW is located here. My first search strategy will be to combine two concepts from my question. Online privacy is one part of my question, and employment is another. I'll click Go to start the search for books and articles that talk about these two concepts. In the results list, I'll review the sources to verify they are a good match for my key concepts. I want to know if my strategy was successful. I'll do this with a quick scan of the titles. This helps me understand a bit about what types of conversations authors and researchers are having about online privacy and employment. In my quick scan, I see new strategies for employment, online privacy practices during the job search, Facebook, online reputation, employment concerns, and a few other sources that are generally about online privacy and ethics. This review gives me a good sense of what the conversation about online privacy and employment might be like, but I would like to find some sources that specifically address ways employers evaluate employees based on their use of Facebook, Twitter, or other social media. In order to do that, my next strategy will be to refine my results. Refine my results allows you to filter your search results. You could filter or limit your results to certain types of sources, specify the dates of publication, or choose a topic to filter your results to a specific concept. Social networks would be a good topic filter to help me get more specific results. Now, as I look through these filtered results, I can see the sources are more focused on how employers evaluate the use of social media by potential employees. For example, number 4 is a journal article about employer use of Facebook. And number 6 is about using online information in personnel selection. By using these two search strategies, combining my key concepts, and using the topic filter to refine my results, I have identified 2 potential sources.
Live from Washington, D.C., it's theCUBE, covering AWS Public Sector Summit 2017. Brought to you by Amazon Web Services and its partner ecosystem.
Welcome back here to the show floor at AWS Public Sector Summit 2017, along with John Furrier. I'm John Wallace. Glad to have you here on theCUBE as we continue our coverage here live from the nation's capital. Joining us now from Enlighten IT Consulting is John Eubank IV. Director of Program Management Office. And John, thanks for joining us here on theCUBE, a CUBE rookie, I believe, is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes. Yeah, thanks for the invite.
Nice to break the maiden. Good to have you aboard here. First off, tell us a little bit about your consulting firm for our viewers at home, to give an idea about your frame and why you're here at AWS.
Absolutely. So we're a big data consulting company focused on cybersecurity solutions for the DoD, IC community. What we jumped into about 3 years ago was a partnership with AWS, and seeing just the volume, the velocity of data coming out of the DoD that those on-premise server farms could not keep up, could not support it with the power, space, and cooling needs. So we partnered with AWS, and over the last 3 years we've been migrating our customers up to GovCloud specifically.
So what are you doing then for DoD specifically then? You said you solve problems, right? They got reams and reams of data, and trying to help them manage that process a little bit better, but drill down a little bit more specifically what you're doing for DoD.
Absolutely. So we developed a proprietary technology called the Rapid Analytic Deployment and Management Framework, RADMIF. It's available on radmif.com, radmf.com.
True marketer.
Yeah, true marketer at heart. So that's our sort of governance framework for DoD applications that want to move to the cloud. It automates the deployment process to get them out of their existing systems up to the cloud. One of the real problems inside the DoD that we've encountered is the disparate data sets to enable effective analytics when it comes to cybersecurity solutions. So I like to think back to the day one conversation about sort of the data swamp, not the data lake. That's exactly what we have inside the DoD. There's so many home-built sensors paired with COT sensors that it's created this absolute mess or nightmare of data. That swamp needs to be drained. It needs to be sort of refined in a way that we can call it a data lake, something understandable that people can...
I hate the term data lake. You've been listening. John knows I hate the term data lake.
Yes.
I even love the term data swamp because it illustrates exactly that. There is, if you don't watch the data and you don't share it, it's just stagnant and turns into a swamp, and I think this is a huge issue.
Absolutely correct.
And so I want you to just double down on that and just give some color. Is it the volume of the data? Is it the lack of sharing? Both?
It's really it's everything under the sun. There's sharing issues all across the federal government right now, and who can see what data. Navy doesn't want to share with Army. Inside the IC,
that'll never
agencies
happen.
Don't want to share with each other. I think we're breaking down those walls. We're seeing that when it comes to cybersecurity, no one person can defend an entire nation. No one agency can defend an entire nation on their own. It has to be a collaborative solution. It has to be a team effort. Navy, Army, Air Force, IC, etc. have to work together in tandem, in partnership, if we're ever going to defend our nation from cyber actors.
I want to ask you a philosophical question because, as someone who's been online all my life, in computer science, you've seen, there's only the notion of trolling, the notion of online message boards, back in the day when I was growing up, is now mainstream now. We have people trolling each other on Twitter, for crying out loud, mainstream. So the culture of digital has an ethos, and open source is a big driver on that. Cybersecurity, there's a huge ethos of sharing, and it's kind of an honor among practitioners, because they know how big the threat is. How is that evolving? Because this seems to highlight, to your point about sharing, that it's, the digital world's different than the analog world, and that some of the practices that are getting traction can be doubled down on. So everyone's trying to figure out what should we double down on, and what are the good practices from the bad. Can you just share some cultural...
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head with the open source model there. That is the key right here. It's not even within the government we need to share. It's industry and government in partnership need to approach these problem sets together and work on them as one cohesive body. So, for example, our company, our platform, it's entirely an open source platform. It's a government-owned solution. We don't sell, it's a big data platform. It's provided by DISA right now. We don't sell that product. It's available to any government agency that wants it for free. We have 1,500 different software developers and engineers from across the government community that collaborate together to evolve that platform. And that's really the only way we're going to make significant difference right now.
And the creativity that could come out of this new process that you're referring to, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here on theCUBE, is interesting because you think about all those people on Twitch, 34 million, I think, a day or whatever the big number, it's a huge number. Those idle gamers could be actually collaborating on a core problem that could be fun. So if you look at a crowdsourcing model of attacking data, this is kind of a whole new mindset of culture. To me, this is the kind of doors that open up when you start thinking like this model, because the bad guys are already ahead of the game. I mean, so how do you guys talk about that? Because you guys have to kind of keep some data masked, and you have to kind of maybe not expose everything. How do you balance that secretive nature of it and yet opening it up?
That's a question that DHS is struggling with sort of day in and day out right now. They're going through a couple different iterations of different efforts. There was the ESSA program, there's the automated indicator sharing program going on right now with DHS and some of the IC partners of what do we share with industry? Because we're recognizing as a government we can't defend this nation on our own. We need an industry partnership. How do we open that up to the general public of the United States to do that crowdsourced mentality? Threat hunting is a lot of fun if you know what you're doing, and if somebody will guide you down the path. It's an endless world and a need for threat analysts to study the data sets that are out there. Indicators of compromise point you in a general direction, but they're a wide open direction. And
they're already playing, it's like lagging in a video game. The gamers are already ahead of, the hackers are already ahead of you. Interesting point, Berkeley, University of California in Berkeley has a new program, they call them the quote Navy SEALs of cyber. It's an integrated computer science and engineering and Haas Business School program, and it's a 4-year degree specifically for a special forces kind of thinking. Interdisciplinary, highly data driven, computer science, engineering, and business so they can understand, again, hackers run a business model. These are organized units. This is kind of what we're up against.
Absolutely
Your
agree.
thoughts on that? You think that's the right direction? We need more of it?
We need more of it, absolutely. DoD is moving in the same direction with the cyber protection teams, or CPTs. They're beginning to do sort of the same formal training models for the soldiers. Unfortunately, right now, a lot of the cyber protection teams are just scavenged resources from other branches of the military. So you have guys in EOD that are now transitioning into cyber, and they're going from diffusing bombs to diffusing cyber threats. It's a totally different scenario and use case, and it's a tough struggle to transition into that when your background was diffusing a bomb.
Well, and you brought up the industry collaboration, talking about private sector and public sector. I know from personal experience in the wireless space, there was a lot of desire to share information, but yet there was a congressional reluctance to allow that for different concerns. Some we thought were very unwarranted at the time. So how do you deal with that? Because that's another influence in this, is that you might have willing parties, but you've got another body over here that might not be on board.
I think we're going to start seeing more of a shift as private industry acknowledges their need for government support and that government collaboration. So data breaches like the Target breach and massive credit card breaches that these private industries cannot keep up with defending their own network. They need government support for defending very large corporations, Walmart, Target, Home Depot, the list goes on of breaches.
Final question, because we're going to wrap up here, but what's the coolest tech that you're seeing that's enabling you to be successful, whether it's cool tech that you're looking at, you're kicking the tires on, from software to Amazon, hardware, what are you seeing that's out there that's really moving the needle and getting people motivated?
So a surprising thing there, I'm going to say the Snowball Edge, and people go, it's just a data hard drive. Well, not really, it's way more than a data hard drive. So when you come to Amazon, you think enterprise solutions, enterprise capabilities. What the Snowball Edge provides is a deployable unit that has processing, compute, storage, et cetera, on board that you can take into your local networks. They're putting it so you can run any VM you want on the Snowball Edge. What we're doing is we're taking that inside DoD tactical spaces that don't have connections to the internet. We're able to do computation analytics on threats facing that local regional enclave using a hard drive. It's really cool technology that hasn't been fully explored, but that's
you can tell you got excited about it, didn't you? Your eyes light up, you got a big smile on your face.
I drove the new Ferrari, came out.
Yeah, right.
It is, when I saw it, I just jumped
all in.
Right.
So
yeah,
3 months right
ago,
away too, didn't you?
Snowmobile, the big wheel.
Right. Well, John, thank you for being with us. I think they're going to kick us out of the place, John.
Hey, they're going to unplug us. We're going to go until they unplug us.
All right, John, again, thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you guys for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you for joining us here from Washington. For all of us here at theCUBE, we appreciate you being along for the ride at AWS Public Sector Summit 2017.
How do we know that on our iPass 1 work we were successful? So from 2000 to 2012, we administer to our students every other year, and we rotate these surveys. So these are national surveys, Sense, SESI, okay? They all measure student perceptions. Well, it turns out that in each of those instruments, there is just a few questions around advising. And remember, we sort of redesigned our advising process. We've been working on trying to help advising not get low student perception scores since 2000. And every 2 years, and we would do things, and we would do things, and we would do things, and we would be disappointed. And it's for people who work very hard, and the advisors work very hard, it wasn't fun for them either. And remember, we don't have any other information, just the way the student filled out the bubble on the form. So we did our first round of IPASS work. We put in our grant application. We were not just going to measure retention and completion, but we wanted to measure the attitude of the students toward the advisors, in a way, and the advising process. And I can tell you, in every single one, moved significantly. So we know we don't necessarily care whether it was, so this is the unpopular part, because everybody wants to know, what was that magic bullet, right? Well, there's probably a bunch. We don't quite know if we pull this out. And you know what? We don't have the time in higher ed to do that really refined 10 years worth of research would tell us that, right? Was it because, there was somebody who sat at the front desk who was more welcoming? I don't know. But I do know that we tried many, many things for over a 10-year period. They never made any difference. When we implemented a new process for advising and then overlaid technology to support their new process, that we saw a significant uptick in the students' positive reactions to the advising process.
Enrolling learners. There are a number of ways in which your students can access your course. For example, your administrator might enroll them for you, or they might be automatically enrolled from outside, or they might be able to create their own accounts on the Moodle site and enroll themselves into your course. In this video, we'll look at how you, the teacher, can manually add students to your course and how you can find out the other ways in which they can access your course. To do this, we scroll down to the administration block and then click the link Users. The two we are interested in are Enrollment Methods and Enroll Users. Enrollment means how students get into your course, whereas authentication means how they get onto a Moodle site. If we, as the teacher, click Enrollment Methods, we can see the different ways that they're able to access or be enrolled into our course. The first one we see is called Manual Enrollments. This means that students can be enrolled by the teacher. The one user here is the teacher herself, who's already been enrolled. Note that for our Teaching with Moodle MOOC on the Learn Moodle site, manual enrolment is not available. Guest Access has its eye icon closed, so that means that currently no guests can look at the course, but the teacher can enable this by clicking the icon. Self-enrollment means that users can enroll themselves by clicking a button. This is currently disabled because the icon has a line through it. Clicking it to open it would allow us to give students permission to access the course themselves. If we now go back and then look at Users, Enrolled Users, here we can do two things. We can see the list of who is already enrolled in our course, currently just the teacher. If there are a lot of users, we can search for them by using the search box at the top, and we can also filter this by the different ways in which they've been enrolled, and by the role in which they have in the course. To enrol users manually, we click the Enroll Users button and then choose the role that we want. Currently it's set at Learner or Student. As a teacher, we don't normally have the rights to enrol other teachers into our course. We'd have to ask permission to do that. We then scroll down and choose the users that we want. So, for example, to enrol this student, we click the Enroll button, and then we can scroll down and finish enrolling users. This is fine if you just have a few users to enrol into courses. However, if you have many, it might be worth investigating other ways of allowing them access. Let's go to a different course in a different Moodle site and explore cohorts. Here is the Enroll User screen again, but this time, if we click the Enroll Users button, we see a new option, Browse Users and Browse Cohorts. A cohort is a group of users created by a site administrator or manager, and we can add cohort members individually from here, or we can go back to Course Administration, Users, Enrollment Methods, and add a whole cohort using what's called the Cohort Sync method. You'll only see this if your site has set up cohorts. Blocks for contact. Two blocks which are useful for us as teachers to keep in touch with our learners and our co-teachers are the Online Users block, seen on the left here, and the Messages block, which we'll add shortly. The Online Users block shows us who's recently been online and who is currently online now. This is useful in a face-to-face teaching situation as well, if you're in a room and you want to make sure that all your learners are logged in with you. To add the messaging block, as with other blocks, we turn the editing on by clicking the button top right or by clicking the link in the administration block, and then scroll down to Add Block, choosing the block we want. The Messages block is a quick way of seeing who has sent you any messages, and you can read them by clicking them here, and similarly, you can use the Messages block to locate learners whom you wish to message.